Hi, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Doug Denny, the host of the Deep Dive series here at Rackspace. And today we're going to be talking about moving your big data strategy to the cloud. And I encourage everyone right now to download the how-to guide by filling out the form and submitting so you can follow along with our discussion today. If you have any questions for our panel today, either now or anytime in the future, please tweet us at Rackspace, and our social media team will make sure that those questions get delivered to me or any of the folks that we had on the show today. So without further ado, I'll introduce our two guests. I'll start with Chandra to my left here. What do you do for Rackspace, Chandra?
Hey, Doug. I am a service line leader for Rackspace Global Services and Solutions.
Okay.
And my team specializes in big data and analytics across all clouds.
Awesome. Thanks for being here today. And then we have Daniel Clayton. What do you do for Rackspace, Daniel?
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Clayton. I'm the Director of Operations for Rackspace Managed Security.
Awesome. So just a quick insight into what you can expect from today's discussion. In February of this year, we commissioned Forrester Consulting to examine how organizations are working to derive business value from big data. And through that process, it was clear to us that there were several barriers when it came to moving big data workloads to the cloud. And so we invited our experts here today to talk about the way that people can push past these barriers, what the options are for folks, and what to consider as they're looking to move big data workloads out of the data center into a cloud or third-party provider like Rackspace. The first of the 4 challenges called out in this report was that data integrations are becoming more complex in the public cloud. Collecting and processing data requires a very diverse array of APIs, and traditional relational database technologies are not always compatible with streaming data and device data. So let's talk a bit about what that means in real talk for folks that are watching the show.
Sure. Doug, so when you look at a typical enterprise today, right, the data silos span many clouds. Yeah. There is a lot of data that is proprietary and corporate data that are very compliant and security stringent, so to speak. They are typically hosted within the 4 walls of your data center,
right?
Not necessarily on the public cloud. And then there is a lot of social data and data from other type of diverse sources that originate in the cloud. Mm-hmm. So regardless of whether you want to run analytics and you want to consolidate these options in a private cloud or in a public cloud, data needs to move in one direction.
Okay.
Whether it's from the cloud to your, within the 4 walls of your DC or from your DC to the cloud. So typically the tools that do this, right? There are tools when you're trying to move something to the cloud. You had products that were meant for the cloud. They were born for the cloud. They were born in the cloud,
right,
and meant for folks that start net new development on the cloud. But when you look at on-prem data centers that cater to more security conscious workloads, mm-hmm, these are the more traditional and the more legacy type of architectures that don't inherently comply with the cloud data formats.
Right.
So this is essentially the problem, right? So what we always advise customers at Rackspace, and we have actually got a framework where before we actually implement or before a customer starts a big data journey, we always recommend customers complete something called a data pipeline analysis.
Okay.
Where we essentially say this system A is going to talk to system B, system C is going to talk to system D, system A is located on the public cloud, system B is located in a private cloud or within your corporate data centers. And this is the format in which they exchange data. These are the compliance requirements. These are the encryption requirements, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So going with this approach essentially means the customers do not have a sticker shock later.
Okay.
You design upfront.
Okay, that makes sense. So just to make this even more concrete then, so for instance, a brick and mortar store that has an online presence and people purchase through different channels such as in the brick and mortar store, but also online, the web facing application that might be cloud native, there might be the engagement all happens in cloud native systems. But when it comes to like managing inventory in the different stores and different distribution centers, those might live in a customer data center and might continue to for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so it is complex. You have to manage all up and down that stack, and there's handoffs along every step of that pipeline.
Absolutely. That is a fantastic example, Denny. Not only do inventory systems remain on-prem, but you also look at third-party marketplaces, right? Where customers or your retailers buy inventory on demand,
right?
Which essentially means you'll be touching into systems that are completely both outside the public cloud and outside your corporate data centers. That's an excellent example of how data is all over the place.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Well, then again, we go much deeper into this discussion in the document. So again, I encourage folks to fill out the form, get the document, and follow along. Let's go ahead and jump quickly into the next challenge then, which is that security concerns around data access can be an inhibitor, as well as storage and the modernization of applications. Right? I think this kind of touches on both of your domains here. Where do we start?
So I think from my perspective, whenever you're talking about a new type of technology, then there's always going to be concerns around adopting it, especially around security and how we deal with those challenges. So, we've seen it many times before with virtualization, as security operations have had to evolve to deal with that. And, now we're seeing it with cloud and big data and, containers and IoT around the corner. So for all of these things, security operations have to evolve to deal with the threat for those new infrastructures and those new platforms. And that's how we overcome the challenges that people have and the concerns they have about adopting those new technologies. So I think the first thing really is that as security approaches these new challenges, as they're evolving, we have to take a different kind of guiding principle to what security is supposed to be achieving. And in the past, security was all about making sure that businesses didn't do something on a new platform or with a new technology that would put them at risk. And that was dangerous, and so really they were there to prevent something from happening. And it doesn't work today. Business is moving too fast now. The cloud has supercharged these businesses, and both the businesses and their customers now are expecting this fast evolution and growing sophistication and pace of technology. And that has to be embraced by security. So fundamentally, the position that security has to take now is one of business enablement as opposed to prevention. And wherever it is and whatever it is that the company wants to do in order to deliver business outcomes to their customers, security has to be able to go there and protect them there and make sure that the data is protected, whether it's in a hybrid cloud situation, whether it's in a private or a public cloud, and whether we're talking about multiple workloads, including big data. So what I would say is fundamentally from a security perspective, there are some things that always have to be done that are to do with, having a secure environment and having a good security posture. I'm talking about things like good access management, things like encryption. These things don't change really based on the platform that you're using. But also security now has to suddenly, or not suddenly, but needs to switch its priority and really take its emphasis from the prevent bucket and this idea about keeping bad guys out of the environment, and make sure that no matter where bad things happen within a customer's environment, wherever the data is, it's very important that security organization is able to detect bad activity when they see it, and then critically be able to respond to it in a way that protects the data as well. So obviously there's differences on different clouds in terms of the benefits or the pros and cons that different clouds can offer from a security perspective. So the different organizations, AWS, for example, is doing some good stuff around encryption. Microsoft Azure has an excellent managed identity access platform, which is really useful. So it's important that security organizations take that into account, harness those wherever they can. And my advice would be to prioritize born in the cloud applications wherever possible. When we think about the security challenges that exist today, a lot of them are because of this idea that doors and windows are being left open in the cloud. But actually, a lot of the time, those doors and windows have been opened up as applications and workloads have been developed in customers' own on-prem environments. So if all you're going to do is move them into the cloud, then you're going to have the same challenges.
Mm-hmm. That's a fair point. Well, and to note too, and we talk about this pipeline that you mentioned, that runs the spectrum of, the cloud service provider's data center and the customer data center. Like there's a point in time snapshot, like at day one, right? But presumably over time, that entire pipeline is going to evolve and shift, right? And so maintaining the ongoing security operation for that evolving pipeline is going to be something that people will have to live with for now and forever, right? So I like to think that when customers come to us with a problem at day one, we like to solve and figure out how we build a solution for them that meets their point in time needs. But that's really the beginning of a long ongoing relationship, right? Both from thinking about the applications they run, but also the way we maintain the security operation for the entirety of that pipeline of systems that are in scope for us to manage.
I think largely, that's what Fanatical is all about. That's what our customers expect for them. It is not only that we're going to give them a solution that solves their business problem today, but also that, a big part of our role is to be looking around the corner, understanding our customers' businesses, and make sure that we're doing the things from a technology and a people and process perspective to understand where they're going and how we best serve them in the future. And that obviously includes security.
Fair enough. All right, we'll move to the third challenge. Okay. So the third challenge called out in the paper, which I encourage everybody to download, is the fact that transitioning away from legacy infrastructure and systems is often viewed as too complex, right? How do we attack that point of view? How do we help people pass that problem?
Sure. And Doug, the main reason for these, right? So most corporate systems, be it e-commerce or be it ERP, these systems have evolved over 20 years, sometimes even longer.
Right.
So most companies realize that these systems don't necessarily allow for innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And the first step and the most basic step is to move from legacy infrastructure, right? For example, things like mainframe and some of the more older architectures and also application platforms, which quite honestly are hitting the end of life.
Yeah.
So what we always tell is the simplest, this is not the ideal path, but if you're under any time constraint, where 80% of your organization's workloads are going to move to the cloud, and your focus area is the remaining 20%. For starters, even if you do not have the time or the budget to refactor applications, take your applications off-prem, move it along with the cloud native applications that Daniel was. The ideal way would be to start with trying to build cloud native applications. But if time or budget is prohibitive, start with the basic lift and shift.
Okay.
At least the infrastructure, the IaaS, the infrastructure as a service component, is modernized. Then the next one, right, which is basically decommission legacy over time. Basically, net new features get added on to cloud native technologies, be it AWS or be it Azure.
Okay.
So start building new features and new innovative features on these cloud native technologies, and gradually let your legacy applications sunset.
Yeah.
So this is best of you don't stifle innovation. At the same time, you don't take on something that is very very large and very complex. The third one, in the ideal way, is a complex data transformation. So that is, in fact, what we would say is every 20 years or so, or every even 10 years or so, applications have to be rethought and re-architected. So what was a good e-commerce platform in 2001 is probably outdated now.
Right.
And when you're going to do that, instead of trying to build something onto something that you already have, it's time to consider cloud native technologies. And when you go with any of these options, right, security implications become, as Daniel mentioned earlier, applications that were built to run on-prem could afford to be a little lax when it comes to the security requirements. That may not be the case when you move your workload to the public cloud.
Sure. Okay.
So, mind just went completely blank now. Sorry, carry on.
Well, we're going to come back around. So we're going to go through this fourth challenge, and if it pops back up, we can jump in. So no sweat.
So no, not at all. So my bad. I was just thinking about something that you were saying that occurred to me, and I wanted to make the point. And really, I think one of the beauties of cloud is that all of the options that you gave there are available to customers now, and to any organizations that are looking to move to the cloud, because it doesn't matter where you are in your journey at the moment. And I talked about recommending that you use applications that were born in the cloud and technology that's born in the cloud, because it's probably been designed without those problems. But that's not where every customer is going to be. It's not where every company is going to be. That not everybody starts with a blank sheet of paper.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, if you do need controls that are considerably more granular, and there are some a lot of customization that you're doing that you can only really support effectively and securely in the private cloud, then do that. Take that step first. And build what you can from scratch, and evolve what you can't.
Yeah, that's a fair point, too, because a lot of the rate of change is going to be driven by needs that might be unique to your industry or unique to the market, the sort of band of the market that you serve, right? So that's going to be different for everybody, but we like to figure out, take that as part of the requirements gathering process with our customers, and help, that will help determine the aggressiveness of the schedule through which we help look at transformation, right? let's get into this fourth challenge to make sure we come in under time and under budget. The fourth challenge that we called it in the paper was the lack of skills and resources around big data and security, right? Expertise available to help people manage through this change. So let's dive into that.
Yeah, and this is actually this is one of the most commonly talked about pain points, Doug. So when you go to any enterprise and you ask what is the number one impediment to you moving to AWS or Azure or a private cloud, the first answer is we don't have the skill sets. And most organizations are right, right? So unlike legacy architectures, where there was a very clear line of delineation between infrastructure, databases, applications, and security, the big data on the cloud world in general, the lines are somewhat blurred.
Yeah.
So in order for you to effectively implement a big data or any platform modernization initiative, you need to have expertise end to end. The application developer cannot just say, security is not my problem anymore,
right,
or database is not my problem anymore.
Right.
So you develop for the infrastructure or the cloud that the systems are going to be hosted on. Same thing, again, going back to security, right? So one of the things is, what we strongly believe at Rackspace, right, is you cannot look at a problem through a very small lens. You have to look at complex transformation holistically, right? Mm-hmm. So when you typically go to a software provider, their solutions are going to be coming from a software perspective.
Right.
Likewise, when you go to a pure IaaS provider, they're going to say, my cloud is the answer for all of your problems.
Right.
So you end up essentially fitting a square peg through a round hole, and not to mention all of the security implications that need to be completely thought about, not just by the security professionals, but also by the DBAs and the systems administrators and the developers themselves.
Yeah, from a security perspective, it's without a doubt one of the biggest challenges, and I hear it all the time from customers that, even if they're sophisticated enough to understand what they need to do from a security perspective, going out and finding the people is really, really challenging, and then recruiting and retaining them is even more challenging. And the bad guys really changed the landscape for everybody. They went out and they trained, organized, and equipped their hackers in a way that made them much more sophisticated. Gave them better equipment, but also enabled them to target Western organizations and do it day after day after day after day. And this has made them very, very successful. And the reality for us today is that if you're going to combat that, you have to match them from an expertise perspective. And we're playing catch up. The industry at the moment is playing catch up in terms of the courses and the education and the number of experienced and expert analysts that are out there in the market. And really, I think MSSPs are starting to take the lead from some of the bigger companies out there at the moment. They've already built these operations. They've already gone out and they've hired the people. And Gartner said in 2016 that public cloud was no less secure than private cloud anymore. And the reason for that is because these MSSPs have already built the operation and built the team and are delivering it at scale. So it really is much easier now, I think, in many cases for customers to outsource their operation to an MSSP rather than you kind of take that difficult decision that they're going to go and build it all themselves.
And one quick point on how to select a vendor, Doug. So that is given the varied skill sets and the varied technologies and the complexities involved, right? What we always recommend to Rackspace is look at the whole thing holistically. If cloud is a critical component, cloud IaaS is a critical component, make sure the provider or the staff that you plan on hiring have expertise there. Then move over to data, then move over to security. Ideally, you want all of this in one roof, and you want your external provider or your internal resources to have done large-scale transformation projects that encompass the whole spectrum.
Yeah, well, I mean that's part of the core value prop of a provider managed services or managed security provider in the first place is the sort of the diversity and the scale of expertise. We get smarter with every customer that we onboard, right? Yeah. Get new experiences, working with new customers in different industries. That diversity and learning lessons along the way is ultimately what allows us to spare customers from having to learn lessons the hard way on their own, right? So I agree with that wholeheartedly. I'm going to move into closing comments and summaries. I'm going to give each of you like 1 to 2 key takeaways. So there's like 1 or 2 things you want people to remember today, in addition to downloading the paper. What might that be?
So big data, right? When you look at all of the challenges, these are challenges when you look at it because you're trying to move something that has been mature for the last 20 years into something that is actually new and evolving. Yeah. But based on what we have seen, the benefits far outweigh the growing pains.
Yep.
So we would be more than happy to. I mean, we've seen so many customers that start with systems built 20 years ago, and they've all successfully transitioned to the cloud.
Yeah.
And specifically around big data technologies and so forth. So definitely do not fear. It's always possible.
Okay.
So I would say my advice would be to come at it from a position of business enablement and not prevention. To prioritize being able to detect and respond to attacks whenever they happen, and to prioritize applications and tools that are born in the cloud wherever possible. And the last piece of advice I would give is to ask yourself the question, am I best placed to build this myself, or should I go and outsource this to somebody who's already built it?
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you two gents for your time today, and I want to thank the audience for taking time out of your day to watch along. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, tweet us at Rackspace, #deep dive, and we'll be sure to connect with you. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.